My name is Megan Dion. I am the Public Art and Artist Program Specialist with the Nebraska Arts Council, and welcome to the Fred Simon Gallery, which is located in the Nebraska Arts Council offices in the Old Market in Omaha, Nebraska. The Nebraska Arts Council is a state agency that offers programs, grants, and opportunities that foster creativity across the state. One of our programs is the Fred Simon Gallery, and we feature exhibitions by artists dealing with all different content and mediums from all over the state. Right now, we're going to hear from our current exhibiting artist about the work that they create for this gallery and in their studio practice and why they do that. So we look forward to seeing you at the Fred Simon Gallery in the Nebraska Arts Council very soon.
Hi, my name's Allegra Hangen. We're here at the Fred Simon Gallery, where I currently have my new exhibition of black and white photography. The exhibition is called Between Two Skies and a Firm Ground. All of the photographs are from Folsom Point Preserve in Council Bluffs, just close by. So I'm gonna give a little artist talk about both myself and the work that's showing here currently. Also, the show is up until August 7th, so come on down to the Fred Simon Gallery whenever you can and see it before it goes away. About myself and my practice, I studied art in Boston. I studied photography with a minor in art history, and I left there in 2014. I later moved directly from Boston to Mexico City, where I later studied my master's in visual arts. And since studying in Boston, I have worked a lot in experimental film, experimental photography, alternative practices and things like that. After living in Mexico for 4 years, I moved back to Omaha, which is where I was born. Lived here full-time for 2 full years, and now I'm between Mexico City and Omaha, Nebraska. Another part of my practice is an organization called Fortuna. We have a artist residence between Omaha, Nebraska and Mexico City, where we invite artists specifically from Omaha to go to Mexico and artists from Mexico to come to Omaha. And a lot of my time is spent between my own artistic practice and this other art organization practice, being a residency director and curator in sort of in the frame of Fortuna. So with these 3 pieces, I feel like they're pretty emblematic of the entire show. Like I mentioned before, these are all taken at Folsom Point Preserve, which is a nature preserve in Council Bluffs, just actually 14 minutes from the Fred Simon Gallery. And this was an area, when I returned to Omaha after living in Mexico City, this was an area of refuge for me. I mean, living in Mexico City was really hard to be in nature. It's like a 2-hour drive to actually get into something that resembles nature. So when I moved back here, I was really excited to be in a city that is so close to nature. And when I found the Folsom Point Preserve, I was really inspired because there's really nothing man-made there. It's just a footpath that's made by other people that are walking there. And so I started, I started recording sound there. I also work at my art practice has a lot to do with sound, experimental sound. So I started recording field recordings in the area, and specifically because the first time I went there, there's a soybean plant like directly across the street from this preserve, and they have kind of this like constant hum of the factory going on. But as you walk around in the area, you can, in some of these, I guess you can sort of get a sense of what the real landscape there actually looks like. But it creates sort of like a bowl effect. And the sounds of the factory sounded like a Tibetan singing bowl, kind of humming. And so I was very, very inspired by that, both like the changing of the idea of like saying, okay, I want this to be like a nature preserve, but there's this ugly factory in front of it, but then also like objectively hearing the sound. And it was really beautiful. So I started going there a lot with the intention to, just walk and be in nature, and also to record sounds. There's a bunch of different birds there and really interesting bird songs. So that was very important to me. And these photos were taken in 2021 after having gone to the preserve a bunch of different times. Basically, my camera is not a great camera, but I love this camera. It's been with me for a bunch of years, like 11 years or something. And it has a lot of memories of travel in this camera for me. And something happened. This is the first and only time this has ever happened, that when I was taking these photos at Folsom Point, something with the advancing of the film, it's a 35mm camera. When I was advancing the film, it would only advance like small sections at a time. So the photos ended up being double exposed, sometimes triple or like quadruple exposed over certain areas. A lot in my work, I embrace error and sort of just serendipity in the art practice. I do a lot of just like I mentioned before, experimentation. So this was a really interesting, happy accident to find when I got my film back. And also in a lot of my work, I work a lot with the idea of glitching, of like breaking the image, of distorting or disrupting the image. And so this felt to me like a collaboration between both me and the camera and me and the landscape, of like just kind of leaning into this glitch of making a fragmented, impossible landscape. So with this piece, I think this double and triple, maybe quadruple exposure is pretty more clear than in the other photos, specifically because in the other photos I cropped to be a really classic photo format, like 4x5. And with this, I sort of let this like collaged, fragmented landscape really dictate where I was going to crop the image. Because like I mentioned, it's just a full 35mm film strip, so there's no break between the photos at all. So it's a lot of my own eye that is deciding on where to crop and where to make these photos within the film strip. So with this, I try to point out to people that are coming to view the show, like more or less where these photos like end and begin. You can basically see here, I mean, with this back gray area, I'm pretty sure that's one photo and it probably ends here. But then there's like another section of a photo here. There's another here, but it's like way smaller than this one. There's definitely something that starts over here and another photo that you can see this white section that is like two photos, sort of the end of two photos overlapped. But every time I try to explain it and even like look at it myself, I don't know how it happened. Even in this area, I think that part of the landscape is actually like that in one of the photos, but I can't tell. I really don't know where some of them end and where some of them begin. And and also in a lot of my other work right now too that I'm currently producing, I'm trying to get away of the like human-centric way of talking about nature or art or just like anything in general. So I'm really giving a lot of autonomy to the landscape and also to my camera. And I like to think that the landscape refused to be photographed the way that I wanted to photograph it, and it insisted on being shown this way. A lot of people that come to see the show mention that this does not look like the Council Bluffs that they know. And I think that's like, it shows to me that the landscape was like, okay, I want to be seen in a different light or shown in this different way. So a lot of these have to do also with like visual rhythm. I think that's really important. A lot of my work is rhythm. Also because part of this show includes a sound piece, which is on my Bandcamp, and I actually made this sound piece utilizing these images as sort of a visual score because it has such a kind of rhythm and sort of visual flowing. This entire room is made up of this installation piece. So I was mentioning before that all of these photos come from the same 35mm film strip, and this is the entire film strip, untouched other than just like a bit of black and white correction, exposure correction, and just printed out in one fabric sheet, basically, curtain. So the idea here, I mean, I've sort of touched on some of the concepts that are really important in this series of work, but going back to a few concepts, I mean, the idea of error in my work and like embracing error, sort of working hand in hand, literally and figuratively, with the camera, and letting the landscape sort of speak for itself and decide on how it wants to portray itself. I feel like that really comes through in this room with this piece. So I also mentioned that I'm really leaning into this idea of an impossible landscape, a fragmented landscape. And so the idea here is that you're situated within this landscape. I wasn't taking these photos with the intention to do like a panoramic image of the site. I didn't know that this error was happening in my camera when it was happening, but it just turned out to be, I don't know, it created its own really sort of like jumpy landscape, fragmented landscape, which is why I call it this like impossible landscape, because you're now situated inside of this imaginary site that comes from a place that does exist, but it's, I don't know, presented in a very, I don't know, I'm sort of not, I don't want to use the word too much like magical, but I do use a lot of magical thinking about this. And so we're sort of in this, impossible site. I did want to mention with that idea of like being situated in the landscape, someone was asking me recently, like, why black and white, why landscape? Because a lot of my work doesn't normally deal with landscapes. And it's been like 10 years since I've done a photo, like a straight photo show. So I'm very happy to finally have a photo show after like 10 years of trying to do this, and then it turns into a immersive video installation or sculpture or whatever. And so I wanted to address, kind of the why of everything. I decided to print these photos in black and white. Well, I shot them in black and white on black and white 35mm. But the intention of shooting this landscape in black and white is because that's a very traditional photographic mode, I guess, of shooting black and white. I mean, we can think of like Ansel Adams, of course, where he's creating these images, these like very grandiose images in usually the Northwest, and it's always in black and white, right? And that's also why I frame them in a very traditional photo format, 4x5 format, and matted, framed in a very, very traditional way. But the images themselves are like very not traditional. And then that sort of gives importance to this section, this installation, because in the tradition of landscape photography and black and white photography, and also like images on a wall behind glass, like very separate, is that landscape photography, usually done by older white men, there was like an inherent cutting off of like human from landscape. It was like landscape is out there and nature is out there, and I'm taking a picture of what's out there, and me as like a male photographer, I'm here with my camera looking at nature out there, like I'm not part of it, you know? So for me, it was important to sort of play with that idea of having these like really traditional photos. Yeah, okay, that's like me looking at the landscape. I really did feel like I was part of it, and I think that sort of comes through in these images because it's not like this very objective image of Council Bluffs. It's a very subjective, like what I was feeling, what my camera was feeling, and maybe what the landscape was feeling in the photos on the wall. But I wanted to push it even more here in this installation to like put the viewer actually I mean, you can touch this piece in contact with this like impossible landscape. So now we're like actually part of the landscape. We're dealing with it like spatially with our bodies. It reacts to people who are walking around the area and around the piece. Even like just walking by it, like the wind is really influences the piece very much. Well, thank you so much for listening to this brief artist talk. I don't actually know if it was brief or not, but thanks for listening either way. The show is going to be up until August 7th here at the Fred Simon Gallery, so please come check it out. Thank you to Nebraska Arts Council for this opportunity, and to everyone here who has been super helpful in getting this show up and this artist talk and everything. It's been really great. And if you want to follow me and my current practice, you can find me on Instagram at allegrahangen.com, Allegra with 2 L's. I'm very rarely on Facebook anymore, so check me out on Instagram. Also, my website is there as well, and I try to update that as much as possible. Yeah, the show Between Two Skies and a Firm Ground will be up for another month, so please come down and check it out when you have some time. Thank you so much.